Before we even jump into the topic today, I just need to explicitly state at the very beginning of this broadcast that this is an AI-generated analysis.
Right. Always good to get that out of the way.
Exactly. But, thinking about our topic today, if an artificial intelligence can, write perfect Python syntax in 2 seconds, why do you even still need to learn how to code?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. So, welcome to our detailed technical review. Today, we're presenting a comprehensive analysis of the book, Web Dev with an AI Sidekick by Mark J. Price.
And it is a fascinating read.
Definitely. The core mission of this review is to systematically examine the book's methodology for, mastering modern web development. But it's about using AI not as a shortcut to bypass learning.
Right, which is what everyone assumes.
Exactly. People often think AI in coding is just this magic machine that does all the work for you. But this book treats AI more like a really patient senior developer who acts as your technical tutor.
Which is a huge mindset shift.
It is. But that actually brings me to a bit of an initial pushback. I mean, if we have these coding assistants that write the actual syntax, it almost seems counterproductive for a human to memorize basic programming grammar. Like, why do I still need to learn the basic syntax if the machine does it?
Well, so that contradiction targets the central philosophy of the whole book, right from chapter 1.
Okay.
Because the integration of AI fundamentally shifts your role as a developer. You transition from merely writing code to, well, evaluating and judging code.
Ah, so you
Right.
become an editor instead of a writer.
Exactly. AI tools can generate functional syntax incredibly fast. However, without a really deep understanding of fundamental principles, you just cannot identify brittle, insecure, or completely incorrect solutions.
Right, because it just looks like good code.
Yeah. The AI amplifies whatever habits you already possess. If you lack foundational knowledge, you will blindly accept poor architectural choices. I mean, the machine doesn't understand the broader business context of your application.
That makes a lot of sense. So to build this critical human judgment, the text argues that you first need to understand the user-facing layer, right?
Yes, exactly. You have to know how the browser actually interprets instructions before you can ask an AI to write those instructions for you.
And that journey naturally begins with the fundamental building blocks of the front end. We're talking HTML, CSS, and SVG.
The classics.
Right. And, we don't need to define basic concepts like what a heading or a paragraph is, but we do need to understand how these tools interact with an AI assistant.
Definitely.
So HTML provides the semantic structure of the web page. It describes the precise meaning of the content.
And that word semantic is key here.
It is. If you use semantic HTML correctly, like indicating that a section is a navigation bar rather than just a generic visual box, the AI assistant has a much clearer context when generating the code that comes next.
Right. When the AI understands the explicit meaning of your interface, it generates the corresponding logic so much more effectively.
Exactly. And then CSS manages the presentation of that structure. The book places a really significant emphasis on responsive design techniques, specifically mobile-first media queries.
Which forces you to design for the smallest screen first.
Right, and then you gradually add complexity for larger displays. Oh, and finally, SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphics, is introduced for generating crisp, code-based vector images directly within the document.
Yeah, SVGs are great because the AI can actually read and modify the math behind the image.
Oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that. That's a great point.
Yeah, so once that visual structure is locked in, the web page obviously needs interactivity.
Right, the fun part.
Exactly. And that's where JavaScript comes in. It operates as a full programming language running safely inside the browser.
Within the browser sandbox, right?
Yes, exactly. JavaScript allows the developer to manipulate the document object model, or the DOM.
The DOM.
Right. The DOM is basically the browser's internal structured representation of your HTML document.
Okay, so it's how the browser sees the page.
Yes. So by writing JavaScript, you can select elements within the DOM
Mhm.
and handle user events like, form submissions or button clicks.
Which means you can update the interface dynamically. You don't need to request a full page reload from the server every single time the user does something.
Exactly. It makes everything feel instantaneous.
But, pure JavaScript is incredibly flexible, maybe a bit too flexible, which is why the book introduces TypeScript as this mandatory structural layer built over it.
Yeah. TypeScript is essential nowadays.
Right, because in standard JavaScript, variables can change their data types dynamically. Like a variable might hold a number, and a second later it holds a line of
Which
text.
is a nightmare for debugging.
Total nightmare. This flexibility leads to hidden errors that only reveal themselves when the user actually interacts with the app. So TypeScript uses explicit interfaces to define the exact shapes of your data structures.
It catches the errors before the code ever even runs in the browser.
Exactly. Actually, I was thinking of this analogy. We can visualize a web application kind of like a human body.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So HTML is the skeleton, right? It provides the essential framework. CSS is the clothing and the physical appearance. JavaScript is the muscle system, providing movement and interactivity.
And TypeScript.
TypeScript acts as the central nervous system. It sends strict signals that prevent the muscles from making dangerous or invalid movements.
Oh, that nervous system analogy illustrates the underlying mechanism perfectly.
Thanks.
And when you're integrating AI into your workflow, TypeScript provides a massive advantage.
How so?
Well, TypeScript's primary value is forcing the developer to explicitly declare their data structures in advance.
Right.
This explicit declaration is absolutely critical when you have to validate code generated by a machine. If the AI understands the exact data interfaces enforced by your TypeScript code, it produces highly reliable syntax.
Because it's operating within strict boundaries.
Exactly. Then you, the human developer, just review the types to ensure the AI didn't make incorrect assumptions about the data.
You're reviewing the nervous system, not just checking every individual muscle movement.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've built the front end, the skeleton, the muscles, the nervous system. But right now, our application basically has amnesia.
Yeah, it forgets everything the second you refresh.
Exactly. Every time the user refreshes the browser, the data is gone. It has no memory. So we need to transition to the back end, where data is persistently stored and our core business rules are enforced.
And for that, the text dives into SQL and relational databases.
Right. Chapter 7, I believe.
Yeah. SQL is the structured query language we use to insert, read, update, and delete information safely. And a relational database manages this data through structured tables.
And it connects them using foreign keys and joins, right?
Exactly. These tables avoid data duplication through a rigorous process called normalization.
Right. So instead of writing a customer's address 10 times on 10 different orders,
The database stores the address once in a customer table, and the order table simply references it.
that makes sense. And the book highlights database indexes too, right?
Yes, indexes are critical. They function precisely like an index at the back of a physical book. If you want to find every mention of a specific word, you don't read every single page.
Right. You just check the back of the book.
Exactly. You look at the index, which points you directly to the correct pages. Now, while indexes significantly speed up reading data, they inherently slow down writing data.
Because every time a new record is saved, the database has to rewrite the index.
You got it.
But, let me push back on this a bit. If you've built a modern web app recently, you might wonder why you even need to learn raw SQL joins and index management.
I hear this all the time.
Right, because modern frameworks almost universally abstract the database using ORM's object relational mappers. The ORM handles all the database communication automatically. You just write a simple line of Python, and the tool writes the SQL for you.
It feels like magic.
Yeah. So since this abstraction exists, why should a new developer bother learning raw SQL mechanics?
Because relying solely on the abstraction is a huge trap. It causes severe problems when scaling an application.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ORMs are incredibly convenient, but they can easily generate highly inefficient database queries behind the scenes.
Like what?
A classic example is the N+1 query problem.
Okay, explain that.
Imagine you ask the ORM to fetch a list of 10 authors and all of their books. A poorly configured ORM might execute one query to find the 10 authors,
Okay.
and then execute 10 separate queries to find the books for each individual author.
Oh, wow. So it asks the database a question 11 times instead of just asking one comprehensive question.
Exactly. And if you don't understand how SQL grouping, filtering, and indexing actually work, your application will face massive performance bottlenecks as it scales up and gets more users.
And I imagine the AI assistant will just happily write that naive ORM code for you.
Happily and instantly. The machine cannot make architectural performance decisions if you lack the SQL context to guide it.
Right, the human has to provide that architectural oversight. So once the data storage is optimized, the application needs logic to process the incoming requests.
And that brings us to Python and Django.
Yeah. Python provides the general-purpose backend logic. The text emphasizes it for its readable syntax and also goes over virtual environments.
which are crucial for keeping project dependencies isolated.
Yeah, definitely. And then Django is introduced as the web framework. It utilizes the Model View Template Architecture, or MVT.
Yeah, MVT is great because it separates the concerns of the application so cleanly.
Break that down for us.
Sure, the model maps your Python code to the relational database tables we just talked about.
Okay.
The view is the logical center. It receives the incoming internet request from the user, applies your specific business rules, and figures out what data to fetch.
And the template.
The template dynamically generates the HTML response to send back to the user's browser. Django also gives you built-in mechanisms for secure routing, user authentication, and database migrations.
Ah, migrations. Those are the scripts that safely update your database tables when your models change, right?
Exactly. And to orchestrate all these back-end operations, a developer has to operate within a terminal.
Right. Chapter 10 touches on bash scripting.
Yeah, Bash and shell scripting are essential for just navigating the file system efficiently and automating repetitive development tasks.
Okay, so we've spent considerable time examining these isolated tools. We have the front-end structure, the database memory, the back-end logic.
The individual tools in the workshop.
Exactly. But knowing how to use a hammer and a saw doesn't mean you know how to build a house. The next step is assembling these tools to build a production-ready system.
Right, which the book demonstrates by building a practical project called TallyApp.
Yeah. And doing that requires setting up a truly professional project environment, primarily using Docker and Git.
Yes. Establishing a professional environment is all about creating consistency. Docker is amazing for this because it creates isolated, reproducible containers for your software.
So you put the database in one container and the Django app in another?
Exactly. A container holds the application and everything it needs to run, including system tools and libraries. This guarantees consistent behavior.
It eliminates that classic, well, it works on my machine problem.
Yes. And this consistency is absolutely essential when you are pasting code generated by an AI assistant, because the AI assumes a standard environment.
That makes total sense. And then Git handles the version control.
Right. Git lets you track changes, create branches for experimental features, and merge code safely. It gives you the confidence to experiment boldly with machine-generated code because you know you can always revert to a working state.
Okay, so the environment is stable. Now we have to talk about testing, which is chapter 12. Testing ensures our code actually behaves as expected.
Which is vital.
The text explains the testing pyramid unit tests for isolated logic, integration tests for connecting parts together, and end-to-end tests that simulate a real user.
Right.
And the book encourages using AI to draft these tests and find obscure edge cases. But reading this section, it highlighted a really significant danger.
Oh, the shallow tests.
Yes. The author strongly warns against accepting shallow green light tests generated by AI.
Yeah, shallow test provides a very dangerous illusion of safety.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, an AI might write a test that simply verifies that 1 + 1 = 2. Or it might check that a user interface button happens to be blue.
Right.
These tests will pass, they'll give you a green light, but they don't verify if the actual financial calculation in your shopping cart is mathematically correct.
So it's basically a script that asserts nothing meaningful about your business logic.
Exactly. Preventing these meaningless tests requires rigorous human planning before any code is generated.
Which perfectly transitions us into spec-driven development, covered in chapters 13 and 14.
This is such a critical workflow.
It really is. The core principle here is that developers must write detailed project briefs and functional specifications in plain English before writing a single line of syntax.
Right. The specification has to explicitly define what the feature must do, the exact criteria for acceptance, and, critically, the non-goals.
You have to state what the application should not do. And I found this to be a fascinating paradox in the text. The more advanced the AI coding assistant becomes, the more traditional human communication skills actually matter.
It's so true. Your ability to write a clear, unambiguous product specification in plain English is paramount now.
Right, because the AI requires strict boundaries to prevent it from inventing unnecessary complexity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, if you ask an AI assistant to build a user login system without providing a detailed spec,
Oh boy.
yeah, it might attempt to implement retina scanning and social media integration when all you actually needed was a simple email and password form.
Because the machine lacks the business context.
Right. Without explicit human constraints and defined non-goals, it will just build features you never requested. Spec-driven development forces you to think about the architecture instead of rushing to type syntax.
Okay, so we have our specified, tested, AI-assisted code. The transition from local development to public deployment marks the final step. It's the evolution from learning isolated syntax to engineering reliable software.
Yes, moving to a public server requires a robust architecture. You can't just run the Django development server on the open internet.
Right, you need production-grade infrastructure. The text utilizes Gunicorn to serve the Python application, and Jinx as a reverse proxy, and tools like Cloudflare for security.
And we really need to unpack these mechanisms to understand why they're necessary.
Yeah, let's break that down. How does this architecture actually work?
Well, we can visualize this deployment setup like a highly secure building.
Okay,
And Jinx acts as the bouncer at the front door.
I like that.
It handles all the incoming internet traffic, it checks the requests, serves simple static files like images immediately, and blocks malicious traffic. It's incredibly fast at managing thousands of simultaneous connections.
So what happens when a request actually needs complex business logic?
Then in Jinx, the bouncer passes the request inside to Gunicorn.
Ah,
Gunicorn acts as the bartender. It is specifically designed to manage the Python application and execute your Django code.
that is a brilliant analogy. And where does Cloudflare fit in?
Cloudflare sits in front of your entire server, acting as a final layer of security and performance. It provides HTTPS encryption, global caching so content loads faster for distant users, and rate limiting.
Rate limiting is huge, right? It prevents automated attacks from just overwhelming your application.
Exactly. The whole deployment architecture ensures the code generated by your AI can actually survive the unpredictable environment of the open internet.
Well, as we wrap up this comprehensive analysis, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative concept to consider.
Let's hear it.
As AI continues to automate the generation of raw syntax, the definition of a programmer is fundamentally changing. It is no longer about who can type code the fastest or who memorizes the most library functions.
Not at all.
So will the most valuable technical skill of the next decade simply be the human ability to perfectly specify a problem?
It really seems that way. If you can communicate the business constraints, define the data structures, and architect the deployment safely, the machine will handle the syntax.
Exactly. Well, friends of the show, I strongly recommend that you read the actual book, Web Dev with an AI Sidekick by Mark J. Price. Engaging directly with the text is necessary to fully benefit from the practical exercises and to test the specific AI prompts detailed in those chapters.
That's definitely worth picking up.
And of course, we encourage you to subscribe to our program to receive future detailed technical reviews. We wish you a great day.